Overgrowth, Part 2. Half of their left forearm is covered in flowers when they finally notice the huge boulder at the side of the path and scurry to hide there when Papyrus approaches again. Thankfully, Sans doesn't give their location away, distracting his brother with puns. "I've been doing a ton of work. A skeleton. Sans!" Can't do a Papyrus voice. Until he leaves, grumbling loudly about his brother's incompetency. Frisk peeks out a minute later, giving Sans an expression that's confused and angry at the same time. Sans shrugs. On one hand, Sans has killed them once, and will do nothing to save them should they be in danger. But on the other hand, if they manage to avoid the danger, they're home free and he doesn't stop them. Neutrals, Frisk thinks. Bloody indecisive. "Do you think he'll be back?" Flowey asks. Frisk nods slightly. Sans waits for them to step out of their hiding place. "Guess you got lucky," Sans says. Frisk looks down at their hand, where the flowers are peeking out of their sleeve. It's a miracle Sans hasn't asked about them yet. Maybe they'll pass off as some sort of flower monster at this rate. "Snowed in?" Frisk points to the way ahead. Sans nods. "Yeah, want me to take you there?" Frisk takes a step back. The skeleton laughs. He walks and Frisk follows, at the 2 paces length behind him, stick dropped in favor of holding Flowey tight in case they have to run. Miraculously, there is no need for that, since soon they see a huge banner that says "Welcome to Snowdin," or adorned in Christmas lights. There are a few monsters huddled around a tree, as well as a few shops in the area. Frisk and Flowey both let out sighs of relief. Sans spreads his arms around. "Welcome to Snowdin," he says. "Paps is not usually here, so I guess he'll have some time to rest for a while." Frisk nods as they look at the inn a few ways off. "Thank you," they murmur, then point to themselves before saying, "Why are you helping?" "Helping?" Sans does an impression of raising an eyebrow, which once again eludes what Frisk knows of physics, because Sans is supposedly made out of bone. Bones aren't pliable. "Nah, kid, you're helping yourself. I'm just watching from the sidelines and letting it happen." "Why not take me to your brother?" Sans tilts his head to the side. He shrugs again. "You're funny. Heard you trying to stop yourself from snickering when you were hiding for Papyrus. You're lucky that Pap has a hard time hearing people over the sound of his own voice." They may be imagining it, but Frisk thinks there's an undercurrent of bitterness in Sans's voice. The skeleton gives one wave for goodbye before he continues on ahead. Frisk stares at his retreating form for a second before they make their way down to the inn. It was time for a good night's sleep, in the hope of having even just one more pseudo-ally in this whole disaster fills him with determination. Frisk wakes up in the morning, thankful that none of the villagers have tried to kill them yet. They're cold and give Frisk hard stares, but that's something Frisk can deal with. They're used to it. They trudge out of Snowdin with Flowey in their arms, shivering in the cold. There weren't any clothes in the shop, and asking if they had any stock at all just gave them a curt no. So, out in the cold, with the only clothes on their back it was. There's something light red in the distance, obscured by the falling snow, that was starting to get harsher, and Frisk mildly panics that it's Papyrus. When they get a little closer and see that the stature is shorter and there's the golden glint of the safe star, Frisk's shoulders sag. Sans is sitting at the sentry station, chin in one hand as he leans out the window. "Didn't think you'd be up for going this far," he says. Frisk shrugs. He snorts. "Thought you'd want to stay in Snowdin. You know, warmth, safety, food. Pap only goes there every now and then, if you're lucky, you'll never run into him." Frisk shakes their head and points up. "Out." Sans stares at them for a few seconds before shaking his own head. "You're really set on that, huh?" The little pinpricks of light in his sockets flicker to the flowers that are covering one side of Frisk's head, and he hums. "There's a lot of puzzles. Shops up ahead," he says. "Pap set them up." You can get past them if you can get past them fast enough, you might be able to get out of Snowden before he comes back. Frisk turns to the path ahead and nods to themselves. Flowey touches one leaf to one of their hands holding his boot pot. The human smiles at him before they turn back to Sans. Thank you. They incline their head downward slightly before continuing their walk forward. The last thing they see of Sans before they pass the station is his mildly surprised look, and the last they hear is his tiny laugh and the words, "Nobody's ever said that before." It takes them at least half an hour to get through the first chap, several mines and the snow that actually electrocuted the weight on it instead of exploding. And half of that was spent playing guess which spot to hit with Flowey. Frisk threw rocks at a few areas. Flowey extended a few vines to feel the ground for anything, and then Frisk would walk agonizingly slow for fear of setting something off. The XO puzzle was easier, if it weren't for the fact that if they got something wrong, the ground would crack, and when they reset the puzzle, the crack was still there, and they needed to solve it before the ground caved in. An hour after that, they meet two hooded figures, dogs, Frisk realizes, that snarl threats and swing their axes at the human without abandon. Frisk gives up trying to pet them and runs instead. Why do I keep doing that? I try to play one sound and it plays like 5 million. I only played the fleeing sound, okay? That never happened. Frisk gives up and trying to pet them and runs instead, right into Papyrus. The skeleton seems a little shocked of seeing them, glancing at the flowers at the side of their head before he frowns. "Human," is all he says before Frisk feels their soul being pulled out of their body and into a battlefield, and there's a huge bone cutting through it. They're back at the Snowden Inn. "We need to hurry," Flowey says as soon as Frisk bothers to open their eyes. "If we hurry, we can get past him. We know how to solve the traps now." Frisk comes. "Frisk!" They push themselves up to a sitting position. "Frisk, you want to get out, right?" he asks. Frisk hesitates, but nods. Sans is still there in his sentry station, chin in hand, and looking as bored as he'd looked since they've first seen him. He says the same things, and Frisk thanks him again. This time, Sans just laughs. That's when Frisk knows something's wrong. They pass the electric trap, the XO trap, and outrun Dogamy and Doggeressa. Frisk had learned their names when they called out to each other to catch the human before it dodged and swerved to somewhere else. With time to spare, the next trap was a bunch of spikes, with the switch hidden somewhere in the snow, and they'd only solved that because of Frisk's exhausted and frustrated stomping, and Flowey's attempts to feel the ground and the trees with his vines for any niches. They run into Papyrus again. This time Frisk dodges immediately, which throws the skeleton off guard for a moment. "Great job, Frisk," Flowey whispers. Frisk spares. Papyrus frowns deeper and calls up several bones to materialize in thin air again and launch them at the human. Frisk dodges one, two, ducks at the third that passes them by a hair's width, but something pierces their leg from behind and they fall onto the snow with a cry. Flowey is dropped and he skids a few feet in the snow. Frisk twists their body to look at their leg, pinned to the ground by a bone, and looks up to see several more hovering in the air poised to hit them. The first bone hits Frisk's back, narrowly missing their spine, and Frisk arches, the moment making them scream harder. The second hits their arm, and the third cuts through their soul. The last stabbed through their back of their head. Frisk shoots up the bed and immediately pats the back of their head, feeling for any wounds there. Of course, there's nothing, but they think they can feel the phantom sting of something breaking their their skull open. Of course, there's... I already read that part. I am failing. There's something cold there. Colder and softer and thinner, but wider than their hair strands. Frisk tugs a little and winces. Another flower. So far, the things have only taken their left forearm and the left side of their face, but the back had just sprouted one. Another one? Flowey asks in a small voice. They nod. When they reach Sans' sentry station, Frisk speaks first. How long does it take for Papyrus to come back to Snowdin? Sans looks at them questioningly, and Flowey is the same. He should be in Waterfall right now. Sans starts. Undyne usually checks the second half of Waterfall, so depending on what he's thinking, he makes rounds in a few hours. Never goes into town unless he needs it. Like what? Frisk tilts their head to the side. Sleep, Sans says. We need sleep sometimes. Food. Frisk makes a face. You eat? He snorts. Of course we do, he says. Would be a shame to pass up on Grillby's. Frisk frowns in confusion. Sans leans back a bit. Wait. He squints, as much as a skeleton can, which isn't a lot. You've never gone to Grillby's? Frisk shakes their head. Flowey nudges their stomach. Frisk, what are you doing? We'll get caught by Papyrus at this rate. It's okay, they whisper back. You stayed in Snowdin for a while, and you didn't go to Grillby's? Sans actually looks offended. Breakfast? Frisk shakes their head again. Jeez. Sans hops off his seat, then steps out of the station. You planning on starving yourself out there, sugar? Didn't have time, Frisk says, turning to the path. Had to hurry. He throws the path a look that flashes into a sneer before facing the human again, expression lax. Come on, he says, walking towards them. We're going to Grillby's. Sans reaches out to take Frisk's hand, and the moment Bone touches skin, Frisk draws back immediately, eyes wide, breathing hard. They focus on Sans' hand. There is nothing there. He's not holding anything, and the sleeve of his jacket is riding up a bit, that they could see that there really wasn't anything there. Nothing that was going to kill them. Sans raises his non-existent eyebrow again. Frisk swallows, then closes their eyes. It takes him a few minutes to breathe normally again. They nod and fall and step beside Sans as they head to Grillby's, but don't touch hands. Grillby's is just like the rest of the shops in Snowdin, although significantly warmer. Frisk relaxes against their own will, and Flowey shakes off a few snowflakes that had gotten on his leaves and petals, immediately leaning forward to urge Frisk towards the source of the heat. The other patrons give Sans a glance, but then they turn back to their own business. They don't even spare Frisk a look, which is favorable at the moment. The source of the heat turns out to be the bartender, and from how Sans addresses him, the owner of the establishment, Grillby's, his entire head is a ball of flame with glasses, and Frisk doesn't know how that works, or how his clothes haven't burned off. Sans orders them 2 trays of fries, and when Frisk shrugs on what they prefer, Grillby hands them a bottle of mustard, much to the human surprise, and Sans holds it out to them. Mustard? Frisk eyes the bottle and looks at the fries, then shakes their head. Sans' grin gets wider, if that is possible. Well, more for me. He proceeds to drown his fries in mustard, and Flowey lets out a small disgusted noise from where he's placed on the seat next to Frisk. Frisk mechanically turns to their own fries and eats, forcing themselves not to look at Sans as he decides that his fries have been mustardized enough, and then drinks the mustard straight out of the bottle.